Welcome to Recovery His Way. I'm your host, Tom Reynolds, and we're on the campus of His Way here in Huntsville, Alabama. Today, I'm joined with a very dear friend of mine, Roger Noah. Roger, good to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
One of the things that as we go through this series, we're having you come in and joining this series in which we've looked at each of the 12 steps of AA and really looked at the biblical background behind them and how Scripture, Jesus, and a lot of those things really taught these principles long before they were written in a book called Alcoholics Anonymous.
Right.
And so that being foundational, I've been trying to kind of get guys to share like yourself about how these various steps have impacted you. And one of the things I was just going to mention to our viewers and listeners too is having been in recovery the amount of time I have in terms of working with guys, one of the things that people talk a lot about is three-stepping. Which is typically the idea that the first three steps are more steps about acknowledging things, affirming things, having ideas about things, but really doesn't require bearing down and really dealing with the facts.
Yes,
and that really when you hit the fourth step and you have to grind out this list of the offenses, the things you've done, the terrible things, and really bring out the baggage, how difficult and painful and how much work that takes. And then, of course, this fifth step really is bringing that all to light is really a challenge. And how many guys kind of go through that kind of three-stepping kind of idea for a long time, sometimes before they get to really doing the work of recovery.
Yes, sir.
And so I want to kind of, you're kind of talking then about these work steps. And I know, recovery is has been a long-term experience for you in terms of this journey. Maybe you could share with us kind of what your journey has been and how you got to where you are today.
Yes, sir. My name is Roger Noah. I'm from Gadsden, Alabama. And I've been in and out of recovery, Tom, for a long time. And many AA meetings, many NA meetings, many Celebrate Recovery meetings. Mm-hmm. And I enjoy them. And I enjoy working our recovery program. And in 2017, I was involved with a halfway house program in Gadsden, Alabama called Gadsden Transitional Living. And I was the house manager over 20 guys. And we actually went to AA meetings and NA meetings and Celebrate Recovery meetings and was, actually working the program. And when I decided to leave the Gadsden Transitional Living and get married and move to Chattanooga, Tennessee, it wasn't long after that I relapsed. After being clean 4 years and a half, I relapsed and on alcohol and marijuana and crystal meth. And within 1 year, I had a felony case for crystal meth possession, and also had a wreck at 108 miles per hour, avoiding the state troopers as they were chasing me and with drugs in my possession. And I broke 2 vertebrae in my back and tore up some knee ligaments. And that was part of my relapse and realizing, that active addiction can take you further than you want to go. Mm-hmm. And I actually was on parole for prior theft and burglary cases and drug cases. And when I relapsed, I violated my parole by moving without permission to another state, out of Tennessee back to Alabama. And when I relapsed, I had the wreck and wound up back in prison. Mm-hmm. And about 2 years into this 4-year prison sentence that I received for possession of crystal meth amphetamines, I was asked to go to a program in Columbiana, Alabama called the Alabama Therapeutic Educational Facility, ATEF is what it's called. Mm-hmm. And I actually, for the first time in my lifetime, Tom, I'd been going to all these meetings, but I'd never really worked the steps. And at this program, we had a core group of about 40 men, and we actually all got honest with ourselves and actually worked the steps with each other. And that's where I started the fifth step. You know, I admitted to God, myself, and another human being the exact nature of my wrongs.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did a personal inventory of myself and actually put it on paper, Tom, I seen the destructive behaviors and attitudes, and breaking the law, and winding up in prison, what my active addiction had led me through.
Mm-hmm.
And I seen, when I put it all on paper and got honest with myself, and I seen where I had broken the law in many different states: Texas, Mississippi, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Tennessee. I understood that, my active addiction was a lot more destructive to me and my family than I ever thought.
Why do you think putting down on paper was? I mean, you obviously, it wasn't like you put anything down on paper you didn't already know.
Yes,
So
sir.
why did put on paper seem to have such a revelational impact upon you?
I actually, for the first time in my life, Tom, seen me on paper and realized that my active addiction was a lot more destructive than I thought that I had ever been, in my lifetime.
Right.
And actually seeing it on paper and putting it down on them 10 pieces of paper that I did front and back, and actually getting honest with myself, really opened up my eyes to see what my active addiction had caused me and my family.
So you had 10 pieces of paper front and back of
Yes,
just
sir.
all the destructive things that have happened?
Yes, that's all the felonies and all the misdemeanors and all the breaking the laws and all the abuse and all the mistreatment of people, in all the different states that I stated before.
Mm-hmm.
And I realize now, by seeing it on paper, Tom, and getting honest with myself for the first time in my life, that I was really destructive, and my alcoholism and drug addiction, caused me to act out of character.
Right.
And I wasn't raised like that, but this is how I acted.
Right.
And I actually seen it for the first time, Tom, on paper, and I was honest with myself about it.
I mean, I would imagine most of us thinking about that idea of putting it all down, and if we had 10 pages front and back of that kind of stuff, it could be a little bit overwhelming. It could be despairing. It could be something where I just want to throw up this piece of paper and throw them away and forget it exists. How do you embrace that in a positive way? Because it sounds very overwhelming.
Well, it was the first time, Tom, like I stated, of me getting honest with myself, because I always thought that, I wasn't that bad of a person.
Mm-hmm.
But really, when I seen it on paper, I seen how bad of a person that I was, behaving like, and seeing, where my active addiction caused me to break the law, mm-hmm. and mistreat people, and all the different, antisocial behavior is what it's called,
mm-hmm. Right.
And realizing that, being honest, Tom, is what really just jumped off on the page,
mm-hmm.
Pages for me, was being honest for the first time, and knowing that I was that person.
What was it that allowed you to do that, though? What prepared you to be willing? Because obviously, having 10 pages, a lot of stuff had happened that you had not dealt with until now. You're at this point, even just a couple of years ago, where you finally sit down and look at this. What empowered you to be willing, or gave you the motivation to be willing to even make the list in the first place?
We were being involved with that program. It was a 6-month inpatient treatment program in Columbiana, Alabama, and getting close to a couple of friends and really wanting to work the program honestly for the first time was a big motivation.
Right.
And I had somebody I could trust for once that
Right.
wasn't going to point the finger at me, Tom, and say, "Hey, you're this bad of a guy,"
mm-hmm.
or "Hey, you're this bad of a person."
Right.
It was a couple of guys, me and getting closer to a couple of guys that
Right.
really helped me to motivate me to be honest with myself, and them with me. They also did the same thing with me.
Right. I mean, that's an important, I think, principle in all this, I think. And I know we've highlighted a lot, but just the power of this community, right? I mean, God created the church to be that kind of a community. And you were discovering that community through this group of 3 or 4 guys. That's what AA is about, little communities of
Yes,
people
sir.
holding each other accountable, but encouraging one another to address these things and make these kind of lists. So as you made the list, you had it. Now the fifth step is really about, dealing with God, yourself, and another human being, sharing the exact nature of those wrongs. Tell us about that. What was that experience like? Who did you share it with? What were your feelings going in? Kind of what was that like?
At first time, my pride didn't want me to share honestly with a guy named Seth and another guy named Brian, and my pride didn't want me to be the person that I was looking at on paper. My pride wanted me to be something different and portray a person different than what was looking at me in my face. And when I got honest with them and them with me, it was a true freedom. It was a true deliverance, Tom, from that person, and all that baggage I'd been carrying for 20 to 30 years of active addiction. I realized, hey, this is what your active addiction does to you. And when I got honest with them, I was able to release it, and them with me.
When you say you felt this pride was kind of the barrier, where did that pride come from? What was it you were concerned about? Because it kind of strikes me that you were worried about something here, that kind of where that pride comes from.
Dealing with rejection and abandonment and low self-esteem, Tom, over the years, if I portrayed this person that everybody respected and said they liked, I realized, that I could just, give a picture of a person that I really wasn't. And so when they allowed me to get honest with myself, Tom, I didn't have to, put up this front of being a person, a big, tough, strong guy anymore, and a roughneck in our community. I didn't have to be that guy anymore, Tom. Right. And honestly, I was thankful that I didn't have to portray this image anymore. And when I did let my guards down and got honest with myself, it's when I got some freedom.
I mean, it sounds like, for so long we tried to kind of manufacture this impression, keep up this facade, and it's a burden, it's wearing, it's exhausting. And so it seems like when you're able to admit it, it's kind of a relief that kind of comes.
Well, Tom, it allowed me to get arrested many times. It allowed me to get a lot of felonies, and it allowed me to go to prison 4 different times. And still trying to portray that person, even after all them years of realizing that I didn't have to be that person. I still wanted to have that image, and when I got honest with self and realized that I didn't have to portray no image, I could be honest with myself and another person, as the program states, is when I made some steps forward.
Well, I know the step says that we're being honest with God, with ourselves, and another human being. I know you've mentioned the couple of guys that you kind of exposed us to. Was it harder dealing with other human beings than it was maybe God or yourself? And was that really the fear, is other people find out?
Yes, sir. Because when you hold that image and you don't get real with yourself and don't get real with another person, you're holding all that in. You're oppressing your real feelings. And so what I realized, God's not judgmental, and he's not going to point the finger at me, and I'm not going to point the finger at me. But it was the fear of acceptance in other people's eyes, Tom, and being accepted, for the first time in my life when I got real, because come to find out, Tom, they're dealing with the same issues.
Right.
That's
the amazing thing I always find with this pride issue, is it's so embedded in fear, right? Where this fear of rejection and the eagerness for some kind of level of acceptance. And when we finally get real, what a relief it is to be accepted for just who we are, who the all 10 pages, front and back, right, of what that looks like. One of the things it says in this too, it says that we are to admit the exact nature of our wrongs. Now, share with me a little bit about that, because it's one thing to kind of generalize, well, I had felonies, but when you have to go through and be very specific, I mean, were you that meticulous about being specific about the exact nature, and why was that important?
Yes, sir. I put down every misdemeanor arrest that I remember me ever having. I put down every felony arrest that I ever had, every fight that I'd ever been in, every robbery case I'd ever been in, every burglary case, every theft case, every DUI, every speeding arrest. I mean, just any kind of arrest and breaking the law, I put it down on paper. And and the program states that we have to get rigorously honest about ourselves and our program.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when I did that is when I got them 10 pages, of stuff, and realized that, hey, that this is the exact nature of my active addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first time that I really ever looked at it, Tom, and realized this was way overboard of what, how and the way I was raised.
Right.
And my active addiction had taken me further than I'd ever wanted to go.
Right. And one of the things about that, being that specific is that, you, as much as you're afraid of that lack of acceptance or that judgment, if you're generally open, then you get kind of a general acceptance from people. But if you're specifically open, then you have the possibility of having a very specific, intimate acceptance.
Yes, sir.
That can happen. Now, when you share with these other guys, how did they respond? I mean, did they go, "Oh my goodness"? I mean, how did they respond to you? And was it surprising? Was it what you expected?
It was surprising to me that you could find somebody that actually cared about you, Tom, as a person, that actually loved you as a brother. And we actually were in this program together, and actually slept in the same room for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to get honest with them and being able to really work the program for the first time in my lifetime and being honest with myself and others was a huge step for me.
Mm-hmm.
And them also, and they shared the same. We had a core group of about 20 to 30 guys that went to AA every night.
Mm-hmm.
And we had several guys was being able to gain some freedom from their active addiction also, Tom, by
Mm-hmm.
coming to that group. And the core group of guys that we had in that AA meeting was we stuck together, and we all went to a meeting every night.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to be involved like that, and then see the growth of other people in that circle,
Mm-hmm.
was, man, it was life changing.
Mm-hmm.
It really was, to see God work on different people on different levels.
Right. That's awesome. That's awesome. So, as much as you were afraid and fearful and intimidated to share with other people the exact nature of your wrongs, you've had people share the exact nature of their wrongs with you.
Yes, sir.
What was that like? I mean, were you aghast? Were you appalled? How did you respond to them?
Well, when I come to find out, Tom, that I thought I was the worst guy ever, and I really wasn't, because it's like I shared with you earlier. These people had done the same thing that I'd done,
Mm-hmm.
and that opened up the door for me, to accept these guys on the level they were on also.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought a lot of the spiritual background to the program for them, and accepting Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, and my source of strength and guidance and courage. And it opened up a lot of doors for the other brothers to be able to also, accept God as their Savior also, and allow them to see a source of strength outside their self for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And because, it's something we shared in that circle a lot, Tom. If we keep making the same decisions depending on ourselves, we're just working our program within ourselves, and we're not really working the program with a higher power, as the program states.
Right.
And what you're depending on is you. You're depending on you as your higher power.
Mm-hmm.
And if you continue to work your program and make your own decisions, you're going to fail.
Right.
So, when I got outside of self and was allowed to see other people grow in the same area, Tom, it just really opened up the door to me, to make me want to be motivated to go that much
Right.
more to the program.
Right. Right. So, That happened a couple years ago. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you kind of cleaned house, kind of dealt with that. Is that the last time that's ever happened, or how has this fifth step maybe impacted your ongoing steps, your ongoing progress?
Being able to continue to work the program, His Way is a blessing to me, Tom, because they allow me to run the AA program here at the program that we're in now.
Mm-hmm.
And a continual process, Tom, is what I'm working.
Mm-hmm.
Because, it seems like that I'll cover these issues, but, other issues will rise up.
Right.
And it's all character defects, and realizing the different character defects that I've had over the years, and they've been so oppressed with alcohol and drug addiction that, I probably had them since I was a young child and never even knew it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And being able to reveal them and give them to God and ask for strength and courage to go on is I say it's an ongoing process for the rest of our life.
Right.
And I know the recovery process is for the rest of our life, but, dealing with self is also for the rest of our life.
Mm-hmm.
So I say it's an ongoing process for us, we have to continue.
Yeah. And obviously the first time you do it, it's kind of like cutting a path through the wilderness for the very first time. You kind of have to get your machete out and you're kind of working it. But once you kind of pave that path and get that path, then the hope is that you continue to journey up and down that path and continue to build this life of recovery. And it's an ongoing journey. And some people can see that as overwhelming, but as you've expressed, I mean, it's a relief, right? It's a freedom. There's a freedom in this. And the more things I can bring onto that path and work through that path, the more aspects of me I can, take through that, the more freedom, the more relief that I get to enjoy for the rest of my life, right?
Yes, sir. It's an ongoing process.
Mm-hmm. Well, Roger, I appreciate you sharing your story with us, and I appreciate your openness and your honesty today, and I appreciate your leadership with the guys here at His Way, doing the AA meetings and kind of bringing that aspect to the guys here that encourages their recovery. So being great examples, encouraging, the leadership's encouraging as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to come and share some of my testimony, and that God is real and that He will allow you to give your stuff to Him, and He'll help you work through it if you honestly and humbly give it to Him.
Amen. Thank you, Roger.
You're welcome.
And thank you for joining us today. If you'd like to know more about His Way, you can check out our website at hiswayinc.org.